Let's start. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our International Space University Space Studies Program evening panel discussion. My name is Omar Hatamli, and I will be the upcoming director for the Space Studies Program. Our panel today is composed of proven space entrepreneurs who are leading advances in the global space markets with deep connections to the International Space University. Thanks to our panelists for joining us tonight and sharing their experiences with us. As we get started, we'd like to remind you that at the end of the session, there will be questions and answer sessions. Please make sure to use the microphones before you ask a question. Before we begin, I would like to introduce our moderator today, Mr. Chris Stott. Chris Stott is the founder. Chris Stott is the co-founder, chair, and CEO of ManSat, the world's largest commercial satellite spectrum firm, and the third largest space commerce center in the world on the Isle of Man. Alongside Sir Arthur C. Clarke, he is the chair emeritus of the Society of Satellites Professional International, the largest professional association in the globe space and satellite industry. Chris is an entrepreneur working with many space companies, on faculty at ISU, where he also serves as board and as chairman of the ISU USA organization. Chris is also founder of the International Institute of Space Commerce, where he routinely publishes, and he's also a founder of the TED ISU and TED Douglas. Chris is an executive and associated producer on several documentaries and films. Please help me welcome Chris Stott.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you, Omar. Very kind. Welcome, everybody. Shalom. Welcome to the third annual Entrepreneurs Panel here at ISU. It is something we started doing a few years ago in Montreal, something we've done in the United States, and we're very happy and very proud to be doing it here in Israel, especially with entrepreneurs deeply talented in their fields who have deep links to ISU and deep links to Israel. Now, before we get going, we'll be doing a lot of question and answer this evening, so please use the microphones. Okay, feel free to ask questions. You can answer questions too. Now, for those watching at home, or if you don't want to ask the question, you just want to tweet the question, you can tweet to hashtag SSP16. Next slide, please. Thank you. One of the most important things you can do in life is to thank the people who brought you here. And it's really important to please recognize our great sponsors, especially the city of Haifa. They have been tremendous hosts, incredibly supportive. Technion University. I have heard, I know it's been said many times, that MIT is actually the Technion of America. I got that the right way around. Also, the Israeli Space Agency, an incredible panel last night. We have also, of course, Adelis, IAI, Rafael, Elbit Systems, El Al, ImageSat, Axiom, Aerospace, and Lockheed Martin. Incredible sponsors who have put their time, their energy, and their monies to allow us to be here, us to be in Haifa, us to be in Israel, and thank you. Always thank you. Now, with that, next slide, please. Before we get on to introducing everybody, a gentle reminder, another thank you to the Heinlein Prize Trust. The Space Entrepreneurs Competition is this Friday and this Saturday. So we're hoping tonight will be inspiring for you to do this. Now, we're entrepreneurs. We do things slightly differently. Rather than myself introduce you to our panelists, I've asked our panelists to introduce themselves, but to introduce themselves like entrepreneurs, an elevator pitch. So they're going to each individual. Daniel, Mayday, and Michael. Daniel, maybe you could start and we'll go from there. Your elevator pitch, please.
It is now, okay. So it's great to be amongst family. I actually would love to speak about ISU the whole hour, not myself and entrepreneurship, because it's truly a dream come true that everybody's here in Israel. But ISU will be part of my bio. So my name is Daniel. I was born in England, but I've been in Israel since 1981, so many, many years. And I always say that I always want to go higher and higher. and higher. So I started when I was young building model aeroplanes. Still do. Wasn't high enough, so I went for 8 or 9 years to design and fly UAVs, which is big in Israel. That wasn't high enough, so I left that business and went to ISU. I got up to satellites and space. So, like any Israeli, went through school, army, and then, as I said, UAVs, and then satellites. 2005, when I came back from ISU, all enthusiastic with no job and no money, I needed to, I got out of the ISU bubble. I did the masters in 2005 and 6. I needed to find a job. Luckily, IAI, one of the sponsors, opened up a position for mechanical engineering, which I did here, by the way, at the Technion. I managed to get into the space business at Israel Aerospace Industry. Worked on a few years with Amos 3, 4, later 6. And after a few years, I moved to the small satellite business. But there was a bug inside me all the time. And a group of people, one of the guys sitting next to me, Meidad, is one of those bugs, or people with the bug in them. Exactly, it's a feature. And Meidad was also working at II back then. It wasn't enough, so maybe we'll talk later about why it's not enough working for a big Lockheed Martin kind of company. But we established a non-profit called INSA, which was the first organization to bring nanosatellites to Israel. And we designed and built, even though it's not launched yet, the first nanosatellite. And then it's spread many, many initiatives in Israel to do with nanosatellites and entrepreneurship. And that's when, with one of my colleagues in II, founded my first company called NSL Satellites, which did many things, R&D, even education, including sending many experiments to the ISS. I sent 2 up a few days ago, and ISS is going above us at 9:37 in an hour or so. So we can go outside and see my experiments go overhead. And then we formed our second company, which made us leave our day job, called Comm. And Comm is a company designing and providing communication solutions and products to actually solve the problem of bandwidth and connectivity in globally, in rural places, and also aiming to bring high bandwidth, but at a low cost to everywhere in the world. So it's a big sentence. I can explain a bit later exactly what we're doing, but it has to do with a very innovative antenna system for satellites.
Thank you. Daniel, Meidad.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Meidad Pariente. My friends call me Mayday. Instead of going through my CV, you can all go to my LinkedIn page, be my friends, read all about it. I'll tell you things that are not on my CV, and I think you should know. I think you should know that I'm the black sheep of my family. My older brother is a musician, my younger brother is an actor, so I don't know how I became who I am. I gave up a career of a professional soccer player, and again, I don't know why I did it, but this is where I am now. I never suffer from jet lag, and I'm never bored. On top of that, I'm married to the smartest, sexiest space engineer ever. She's sitting on the side of this nice Churchill place. You all know her. She's my challenge. She's my inspiration, and nothing of what I accomplished wasn't been possible without her. Her name is Maya, to those who didn't get it. I'm currently chief engineer of 3 different space companies. I help those companies raise slightly more than $20 million US. I had a signed contract for an investment of $14 million, and I lost it on the last day. And currently, the most important thing I do is Sky and Space Global. Instead of telling you what we do, I would like to tell you what we believe in. So we believe that communication is essential to bring peace for this planet. We believe that communication is a way of bridging gaps and knowledge. And we believe that communication is a basic need for each and every human being. And this is why we aim to bring affordable communication to 4 billion people that have no solutions that they can use. And if you want to know more a little bit, you can ask me later on.
Tricycles, spectacles, testing, 1, 2, 3, 4. Michael.
So greetings, good evening. Michael Potter, alumnus of the first class of the International Space University, MIT, class of 1988. So I'm the dinosaur here on stage. And so it's fantastic that we have such diversity on the stage, but also an amazing amount of continuity, which I don't think anybody realized until about 2 minutes ago. So it's fantastic. So my background, I went to the London School of Economics. I was a master's in international relations and expertise in nuclear arms control. So I ended up in Washington, D.C. at a foreign policy think tank, and I wanted to do the professional part of my studies. And they told me, they said, look, this is such a sexy area, you'll never get a job. But they said, we have a very boring area that we can certainly get a job for you. It has to deal with international telecommunications. So I was angry and disappointed, but I decided I'd take the plan B, that I'd work in international communications. And fortunately, I didn't realize at the time, but that was the exact moment that deregulation of telecommunications started to sweep the entire planet. And I happened to be in the right place at the right time. I did a project, a presidential space policy transition project, and right after that, I had a mysterious offer to go to this university, the Space University, with a free scholarship at MIT, so that's what I did. And then when I got back, I started working on entrepreneurial projects, entrepreneurial telecommunications projects. We took a company public. I've been involved with space investment. Of course, a few of you who came out the other day for the film Orphans of Apollo, which chronicles really one of the early greatest entrepreneurial space projects. And more recently, I'm involved with a project that I'd love to talk about tonight. And it's a little bit different than the other two projects. Rather than a for-profit project, this is a social enterprise project. So we're trying to bring internet connectivity to the last billion people on the planet. But we don't want to do it in the model of philanthropy. We want to do it in social enterprise. So we want to bring the technology and the tools to villages so that the villagers can own their own technology, they can be empowered themselves, they can take control over their lives. So I'm a nonprofit, but we're trying to use the tools of social enterprise to make a positive impact on the planet.
And one of the questions I wanted to ask everybody is, we all came from this traditional structure, and then we all, made a choice, we made a change. What was it made you become entrepreneurs? Did you wake up one morning and just think, I want to do it? Or was it something you thought about? What made you make the leap?
Going by order, okay.
Yeah, we don't. Up to you guys, whatever you guys want to. Yeah.
It's a difficult question. I think I take after my mum, who does a million things. Never retiring and never stopping. I said, I need you to babysit. Stop, please. But she doesn't. So I think when I was working in my UAV company, I had a boss who was disruptive of all the UAV companies in Israel. Everybody hated him. He was a bit crazy. and we did great things in a very small team. And he always said that I want my own company because I just want to work on my ideas and not someone else's ideas. And when you're working in a bigger company, even if you do have some room for your own imagination, it's usually or nearly always limited. It's not like today when I get up in the morning and every single day I decide what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it and how I think best to do it. Of course, that means I could fail, but at least I'm there to pick up and continue. So I think it's a bug within me to do more things. I do other things like ISU. Every year I teach in the management department, scholarships for Israelis. It's just, I think, a bug you can't get rid of.
One, two, okay. Well, I must thank IAI for making me an entrepreneur. I've been working in Israeli aerospace industries for 15 years. Started off as a satellite operator and gradually building my career. And I had ideas. And when one time was too much for me to be rejected for my ideas, I decided to go elsewhere and just do what I believe is important and do what I believe will make me happy. Because at the end of the day, being an entrepreneur is a tremendous risk. And if you don't have the passion inside of you and you don't really love what you do, don't do it. And again, I think it's like any other story regarding resources. Once you are short in resources, lack of resources, this really pushes innovation. So from the short answer is, I'm here because of IAI.
So Michael, it's almost what it's in the family, something you pick up organically. It's you haven't eaten for 3 days, so you know you've got to get something done. The lack of resources. Michael, what was it with you?
So I think that one of the things that's difficult about entrepreneurism is that it's part of the human condition that we don't want to fail. It's it's embarrassing, and I think oftentimes as humans we don't want to be judged, and certainly we don't want to be judged harshly. So it's almost like we emotionally we try to stay away from the flame of the pain that goes with either being judged or dismissed or failing. And so for me, I kind of painted myself into the corner. And once you painted yourself into the corner, Sun Tzu, the Chinese military strategist, said, if you want to win a war, he said, line up all your troops against the edge of a cliff. And there's only one way, and that's to go forward and to prevail. And I accidentally ended up in that situation. So at that point, I only had one direction to go, and that was to go forward. But I think entrepreneurs, when I did psychometric testing when I was in 8th grade, they gave everybody in my class psychometric testing, and they said I would be an inventor. That was the conclusion. So I didn't become an inventor, I became an entrepreneur. But entrepreneurs are basically problem solvers. So we're always assaulted with problems that have to be resolved. And sometimes, in business, one of the uncomfortable things is that sometimes you can't solve a problem perfectly. So you just try to make it slightly better than some of the other options, and you do the best that you can do. But I think one of the things about entrepreneurs, and particularly space entrepreneurs, is that they say that pioneers are great, but they're the first ones that get shot by the Indians. So that's the difficulty about being an entrepreneur. You get out on the forefront, you invent something, you do innovation, but it's oftentimes the second group, or maybe even the third group, that get the spoils and they get rewarded for that. And I think the final thing about entrepreneurism, and I guess particularly in the space field, is that it reminds me about the advice that I once got when people are racing cars and the car in front of you starts to spin out. The advice, which feels very uncomfortable, is that you should aim your race car directly for that one, because they said by the time you get there, that one will have moved out of the way. And that's a little bit like being an entrepreneur in the space industry.
Exactly. It's that burning desire to actually have your own idea and get it out there. And even when I was at Lockheed, wanting to do ManSat, everyone told me not to do it. No one knew what an entrepreneur was. Everyone didn't want you to actually go out and do this, but you had to do it. And once you started making those decisions, it became intoxicating, facing that risk. And we were chatting with one of the students today, and we were talking about the adrenaline fix. And until he mentioned it, I hadn't thought about this. It becomes almost intoxicating, this ability to make your own decisions, to actually get out there and stand in front of the customer, stand in front of the financier, deliver results. I mean, do you find this, do you get a rush? Is it just, you know, how do you guys find it? I mean, all of you are a couple of years in to your own companies. And, you know, do you find that? And what would you tell your former self? I mean, is there any lessons learned that you could share with the audience and say, you know, don't do it, or I'm glad I did it, or, you know?
I think it's a bit early for that question, but all I can say is be ready to go on a roller coaster ride. You know, you're up sometimes, you're down sometimes, you're scared sometimes, you're brave sometimes, you want to get off sometimes, you want to get back on sometimes. It's definitely a roller coaster ride being an entrepreneur. I think both Meidad and I are relatively at the beginning, so we don't have all the answers yet, but it's definitely a roller coaster ride. I've been asked questions, you know, during the business and management department every year. Do you sleep? When do you have time to do this, that, and family? And I say, no, I don't sleep. How can I sleep when I've got so many things to do and things to finish? And every time I lock up the office and look back, it's as if it was, you know, I've been there an hour. I didn't have time to finish everything. And then when I get home, America wakes up, and I've got subcontractors in America and customers in America, so that's another whole shift. So a few hours with the kids, bathe them to bed, and you're off again. So no, we don't sleep, but ISU are used to that. So a roller coaster ride is my definition.
Can I get the mic off? First of all, I want to refer to what Daniel says. I sleep. When the Dalai Lama once talked and said that each and every day he meditates for an hour. And someone from the audience said, and what's if it is a very busy day and you have lots of meetings and you need to travel? And he says, well, on those days, I meditate 2 hours. Mm-hmm. So I think it's all a question of making decisions on a daily basis of what is important. It's like triaging. You know, triage in medical emergency. Whenever you are in a situation, you need to divide the injured to 3 groups. Those that doesn't matter what you do, they will survive. Those that doesn't matter what you do, they will die. And those that need your attention. And for an entrepreneur, you need to triage all the time. All the time. Advice to my former self, with show of hands, how many of you can explain the law of aerodynamics and how airplane can fly? Hi. Okay. How many of you actually took an airplane and lift off? Wow. A crowd of pilots. Okay, next analogy. How many of you play chess?
He's pivoting.
How many of you stopped playing chess after their first loss? How come almost all of you lost a game of chess and still play? And when it comes to business ideas, you are so afraid to start because you failed to lose. This is the question, and you talk about it. It's part of the game, and entrepreneurs that really made it, it's because they didn't quit. They never give up. Never, ever give up. It doesn't matter who tells you it's crazy. It doesn't matter how many no's you'll hear, and you will hear a lot of no's. If you believe yourself, you will make it. And hire a really good business development guy, because it's not about the technology. It's about how to deliver an idea, and for that you need experts. The analogy with the airplane was supposed to tell you that it doesn't cut you all the way to being an entrepreneur if you know the technology. You also need to understand people and how to talk to them, and for that you need businessmen, or women, of course.
It's good advice.
So I think that for me, business and problem solving is a little bit like a Rubik's Cube. So you have to find the right formulation, and I think that you know, going back to some of the lessons, what would I have told myself, the younger part of me, and it really goes back to this issue about putting together entrepreneurial teams, and I think that. And the two go together because it is like a Rubik's Cube, but I think sometimes there's a requirement to pivot, so you have to kind of move quickly. So as you go out and you talk to people, let's say mostly investors or customers, and oftentimes the customers will say, hey, that idea seems crazy, or the investors say that idea is crazy, and sometimes they're right, and that's, you know, that's frustrating. But then you, like the Rubik's Cube, you have to then pivot. But I think if I went back to the lesson that I would have taught my former self, that's the importance of putting together teams. And Chris mentioned this in the lecture yesterday, which is that if you have the right people on a team, you can figure out how to do the right pivot, or you can figure out how to do the right solution. And I would say making sure I had the right people on the team up front will save you tremendous headaches and unbelievable amounts of money. And oftentimes people say, oh, well, this guy, he's a graduate student and I can get him cheaper than somebody else and I'll go cheap. And my feeling is that in the end is often kind of a bad investment.
Absolutely. Pay peanuts, get monkeys. And you never want cheap employees, a cheap doctor, a cheap lawyer, or cheap medicine. But one thing you mentioned, teams, people, and we're in the startup nation, Israel. What is it that makes Israel the #1 place in the world for startup companies and entrepreneurs? Why is Israel the startup nation? What's the secret sauce? I mean, you know.
Well, that's I don't know if it's a question for this panel, but for us, but having many friends in startups, and of course the army has a big part of it in Israel, and there's a few places and units in the army which act like startups, and are really startups in a way. Maybe startups with endless funding, which is great to have, but they are startups. And people come out the army, and my dad is a financial advisor, and when we came to Israel, he was starting to look for his first jobs, and part of the things he found out that Israelis were terrible at business plan writing, had no idea how to write a business plan, but of course great with ideas and companies. So people come out the army here fearless, and they have ideas, they want to conquer the world. It's part of the way we grow up, the country we grow up in, and it is a unique country. You know, when the leash is cut after you finish the army, you want to conquer the world. And sometimes real life is relatively looks easier than you know, your army life or the life before. So that's part of it. That's my view, I think.
I think that lack of structure in the society and in the Israeli companies is what makes us such good innovators, because I'm not aware of any other European, American, or even Asian companies that allow workers to step up into their boss's office and tell him directly to his face, I have a great idea, but my superior prevents me from pitching that. It will never happen anywhere else in the world. Here it happens on a daily basis. And the fact that you are appreciated for good idea, it doesn't matter how small or unimportant are you in the structure of the society or the company, really pushes people to think all the time. And as Michael mentioned, problem solving, this is the key. And living in Israel, it's a continuous problem solving way of living. So most of us are always searching of how to do things better.
Yeah, I think one of the things that surprises the world oftentimes is that if you look at the Nobel Prizes that Israel has got as a nation, and mostly in sciences and chemistry, medicine, physics, and it has to do with a certain sort of creativity. And I think that a lot of entrepreneurial companies, in order to be relevant and to have impact, there's an awful lot of creativity involved. Of course, creativity is great, and I think that many entrepreneurs have creativity. Of course, the other thing that you need is kind of the discipline and the determination to go with it, because there's plenty of great ideas, plenty of fantastic ideas, but it's really at some point about getting the right idea down to the end. So, but one of the things that surprised me about Israel, and this is something that I think about a lot, and that's just because I'm interested in satellite telecommunications, but the Amos 6 satellite, which gets launched in September, is really the beginning of an architecture in terms of satellite communications, reaching villages and providing village connectivity. And it's the beginning of an architecture that could touch 1 billion lives. And it's so interesting because so many Israelis I talk to in high technology, they're so, I don't want to say obsessed, but they're fascinated by apps and cybersecurity, all these, obsessed, okay, so but with all these other creative things that have been very, very lucrative, but I think there's something really profound going on, and sometimes it seems to me that it's a big trend that's at the moment being missed.
And what other trends are being missed in space? I mean, we talk about creativity, and we often think of space as rockets, astronauts, satellites, but space entrepreneurialism is many different aspects. Software, more than this. I mean, maybe let's reverse from Michael. I mean, other things that people do creatively, entrepreneurially in space.
Well, maybe I'd like to do just a quick demonstration about creativity. So I've got a little package here, and if I get a volunteer from the audience, hey, right here. So this is a potential marketing opportunity, and if you could just open this, and it's a potential product with a potential space marketing opportunity. So if we can take it out. So it's wedged in there tightly, but I'm going to ask the audience, and maybe people could tell by the container. Does anybody know what this is? Any guesses? What's that? I didn't hear. Spam. Okay, but that's close. It's not spam. So this is Japanese space bread. This bread is sent to the International Space Station. This bread is also sent to crisis areas around the world. When Haiti was hit by an earthquake, tens of thousands of space bread was sent to Haiti. It's been sent to many disaster areas. But this bread was flown to the International Space Station originally in 2007, And a lot of it has been sent there to feed astronauts. So it's just emergency bread, but these guys were creative enough to have it launched on the shuttle Discovery. It was taken to the International Space Station, and it's actually got a lot of visibility and publicity as a result of that. So there's a lot of thank you so much for doing that. But there's so much creativity you can do. I know that Chris Stott is involved with a company called NanoRacks, which takes all sorts of products, experiments to outer space. So really, the only limitation with space is the limitation of our creativity, and I think that's really a small example.
Thank you, Michael. And with that, are you guys okay if I open it up to questions from the audience? And we'll take it from there. So, questions. We had a shameless plug. Now it's questions from the audience. It's good. And didn't your father write a great book on finance? Do you have a copy with you, maybe? Very good at the AU, maybe. So, come on, ladies and gentlemen, you've got an incredible opportunity to ask real entrepreneurs with real experience, real battle scars about what it's like. So please, I think there's microphones coming round, and if you could tell us your name and where you're from as well.
My name is Nikita, and I'm from Ashdod. And I wanted to ask if there's any kind of skill that is missing, that you can't find enough people that have that skill. What would it be?
For our individual companies, or for entrepreneurialism in general? What skill are we missing?
For companies or entrepreneurs, maybe a skill that you wish you had when you first started.
More confidence, I think. More belief in yourself. And I tell you, there was a magic moment. Okay, and I'd been very fortunate to have great jobs in McDonnell Douglas and Boeing with launch vehicles, at Lockheed Martin, doing space operations. And we all grow up in this society, this Victorian education system, where we are taught to ask permission to do everything. Teacher, can I please do this? Can I please ask a question? Can I please do everything? And in the corporate world, you have a management structure. You need something, you requisition it, you do these things. And it was about the second day after I'd left and formed my own company. And I was sitting there with a cup of coffee, and I thought, I really need a new printer. Who do I ask for that? And it struck me like a lightning bolt. And it was like this dam had broken. All of a sudden, I'm like, I can just go do that. Wait a minute, I can just go put the website up. I can just go hire someone. Whoa! There was this most liberating moment. But it was a problem that I had. I didn't have that confidence at first, and I hadn't realized how much internal strength you have to get things done. And from an entrepreneurial point of view, those are the kind of people I look to hire. Actually, everyone we hire at my companies are all ISU students, because we find out that they have this wonderful self-starting ability and this teamwork as well. Now, the industry, satellite world, shameless plug for the satellite world. We always need more of everything, everywhere, and everybody. If you go to any satellite company, satellite operator, from Telesat, great Canadian firm, offices around the world, to Inmarsats and others, incredible companies, all sponsors of ISU for a reason. There's so many jobs open. Think about careers in satellite. Society of Satellite Professionals International, there's my shameless plug. But we always need more people. This is the greatest industry for the rest of human history. Space takes the very best of computing, software, material science, biotech, nanotech, artificial intelligence. It takes the very best engineers, business people, salespeople, journalists, PR people, communicators. And even then, all of our combined talents are barely enough to pull this thing off. It's the hardest thing the human race has ever done. And we need more of everybody.
Speaking of jobs, we are searching for someone in our UK office. So if you want to change the world, please, after the panel, come and talk to me. I just want to emphasize again, when building the team and you get all kinds of engineering discipline, please don't forget to hire someone who really knows business. The fact that you know how to write presentations and you know how to run the Excel spreadsheet and have a business plan with bajillion of dollars in revenues doesn't mean that you'll have a company. So don't forget to hire someone that really understands how to talk to investors, how to give a pitch, and how to convince. It could be one of the engineers. You can be both. That's okay. But think about it, and this is key for success in the new space business.
And I think that the very best people in whatever functional area you choose to be will always be hired. So if you're very good at something, just be the best, you'll be hired. But the other thing with a lot of startup companies, because the teams are so small, you have an opportunity to do a number of things, which can be very, for some people it's overwhelming, but for other people it's very empowering. And the more responsibility you take on, even if it's a young team and a young group, you can have a tremendous amount of opportunities.
I think something I would like to add, and it started here in the Technion. Part of our beginning of our company was a kind of an accelerator program called BizTech in the Technion, which we took part of about 4 years ago. And someone, the manager of that accelerator, then became one of the members of our board of advisors. I think another important thing is that you need different people to help you at different stages of the company. And you definitely need advisors and people with expertise to come in. But it's also wise to think, what kind of people do I need now, in my really early stage when I'm learning everything about business and raising money? And then once you've raised money, do I need a set of different people to take this company from stage 2 to 3 and building a company? One of the things we found out, great, we raised a few $1 million, we took an office, okay, great walls and ceiling, but now we have to build a company. How do you build a company? So then you need a different kind of set of people to help you and advise you. And of course, later on, when maybe the product is ready and you're starting selling, then it's a different set of people. So those first few years and those first few stages, you definitely need different kinds of people at different stages to help you out.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, in the political campaign, you say that there are people that are really good at getting people elected to office, but those are not necessarily the right people to be running the government. And I think it's a similar story with entrepreneurism.
Yeah, it's a great analogy, actually. Good question. Another question from the audience, please. Oh, gentleman at the back.
Hi, I'm Sa. I'm a student here at the Aerospace Engineering faculty. My question to you is, can you please tell us one or two of your biggest mistakes along the way of being a space entrepreneur? Thank you.
Is $14 million a big mistake for you? My biggest mistake that cost me $14 million was that I didn't hire someone professional to double check all my calculations. I built a business plan around an assumption, asked a friend to check it out. He missed the same mistake I missed for about 6 months. We never saw that. It was a blind spot. Had I hired a professional auditor or engineer in this case, this mistake was, I'm almost certain, was spotted at a very low stage and not at the end of 6 months of negotiation with investors. But again, like in the chess analogy, if you hate to lose, don't play the game.
I would say I have, two. There's probably many kind of disastrous decisions, but one of the ones that I think is an important one is that when you're working on a project and you're not getting the traction that you want, and you suspect that the person is not really achieving what they need to achieve, I just say fire them earlier rather than later. That would be one mistake. The second thing that I learned is that governments generally make horrible partners if you're in business. So if you're an entrepreneur and your customer is the government, that can be a horrible, horrible experience. And I can tell you that I was involved with the satellite telecommunications business in Spain, and I made the innocent mistake to believe that the Spaniards would actually follow European law that they were obligated to follow. But I didn't realize that there was corruption and incompetence and stupidity, and that could have an impact on my business plans. So that's another mistake I learned.
I won't talk about my mistakes, which there have been many. But one thing to do is acknowledge the mistakes, learn from them, do the triage, and treat them as a learning experience. Okay? Everybody falls down. Failure isn't falling down, it's not getting back up again. And a classic quote is, the reason you fall down is to learn how to get yourself back up. Everybody makes mistakes, but very few acknowledge them, triage, just as you're saying, Meidad, and move on from that. And that's a key skill, I think, for any entrepreneur. All right, we have someone tweeted some questions. I know. Someone's actually watching. I think all of our family are out there watching, tweeting questions. So, we have 2 questions, okay? First question is, I have a great idea. Should I quit college to pursue it? Not in the middle of the SSP.
One comment on that question. As much as I would love to fill my company with very young people and very, fresh ISU students out of, undergraduate, unfortunately, I feel there is a path to go through before you become an entrepreneur. And it's better, and you can see some examples here, it's better becoming an entrepreneur after you have some experience or quite a bit of experience. One of the most important things, obviously, is to know what you don't know. And when you're a bit too young and inexperienced, you think you know everything. You need to know what you don't know, and that takes time. And you need to have, a bit of a career somewhere. So no, don't drop out of college.
I think the best people I work with are the Model T people. That means that you have some kind of a profession or some kind of knowledge base that you really know deeply, and then you are interested in everything else. So this is like the Model T. And my advice will be to this guy, choose something you really, really love, and then be the best you can in this, and keep your mind open to everything else, and then you'll succeed.
And I think it's interesting that if you look at people like Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg, they both are Harvard dropouts, and but they were successful. So, but I've seen numerous people who say, hey, I'm going to be like Mark Zuckerberg and I'm going to drop out. And I generally say, well, I don't think you're Mark Zuckerberg, so I think I'd stick in college. But the one thing I will say is that the traditional higher educational system is going to start to come under increasing pressure as a result of exponential technologies. And so the model that we're so used to, which and it's the advice that we were always given growing up and we'd give to other people, which is stay in college. But at some point, it probably won't be the right decision. And if you look at synthetic biology and artificial intelligence and nanotechnology, if you look at all these exponential technologies, it's not so far away that a freshman or sophomore student in university has the possibility to be that special person. So at the moment I'd stick with it, but very, very soon the good survival instinct might be to drop out soon.
I think Peter Thiel got his answer. I think he tweeted us, which was Peter Thiel's a very famous gentleman who pays people not to go to school. You should have talked to him before you came here, you see. Now, another question from the audience.
So I hear you, and it seems like if you are a creative and a visionary, and if you want to improve society, then you have to be an entrepreneur. But there is also the business aspect, I guess, and some great ideas which are very important for society don't bring money to the business. At the end, I guess the success of an entrepreneur is also measured by can he survive to the next year. So my question is, can you comment on your non-profitable enterprise? That's one. And also, what's your advice to bring creativity and visions to, say, governmental organizations, if you think it's possible at all?
No, great question. Because I think what drives you to be an entrepreneur? It's like a dancer must dance, a musician must sing. And for entrepreneurs, we must create, and we create our version of creativity is through companies. But also, I think what you're seeing too is a minor revolution in the last 10, 15 years of social entrepreneurism. And I thought it was really interesting when Daniel, Meidad, and Michael were all talking about what they do. The vision was passionate, the vision of changing the world through business. Now, here's I had to get myself shot by a sniper from the United Nations. But what we're finding is that aid really doesn't work. It is just so monumentally destructive. But what does work is capitalism. It creates an economy. A great TED talk by Bono from U2 on this. One of the people you wouldn't believe would even talk about this. So social entrepreneurism, actually creating jobs, creating new markets, delivering services in a sustainable way. We're finding, and okay, I won't speak for the others, I'll let them speak for themselves. The NGOs that I'm involved with, and a lot of the startups I'm involved in, we're out to actually fundamentally make the world a better place and change it in a sustainable way, which is through business. It's amazing. But gentlemen, please, I mean, I know what these all guys will do, but touch on it. I mean, Meidad, you went straight to it in your vision too.
Well, 1, 2. First of all, if you'll ask my bank manager, for many years I was a non-profit organization. Unless you have a business side to it, it's very hard to bring people together. It's not only ideas. It's also, as been told here on the stage, it's how you take an idea and make it a reality. NGOs are great to bring people together, to think about how to build a better society, to develop technologies and technology solutions. But at the end of the day, if it's something that can bring profit, there's the change. And regarding governments, it's all, from my point of view, the people that run the government. It's not the government for what it is. It's not the organization. So hopefully, here in Israel, we'll see more and more members of Knesset that come from startups and from being entrepreneurs in the business world, and they will bring these passions and tools of how to push ideas into our daily lives through the government. So maybe what we all should aspire to is to make our companies as successful as possible, have 2 or 3 exits, and then with all that money, we can go to governments, become elected, and change the world.
Actually, it's all that money that we make that pay the taxes that pay for the governments. Michael, Daniel.
So I'd say that oftentimes, the stereotype is in college, people are very idealistic and they want to have an impact on the world. So oftentimes people say, I'm going to go work for a government, or I'm going to go work for the United Nations, and that's how I'm going to change these organizations from within. And sadly, I think that it's very hard to have an impact within government or within an international NGO or the United Nations. And so I think, if you ask people to be sincerely honest, if you say, look, the system's been broken for 50 years and you're graduating from college and you're going to be the one person to change the United Nations or the one, it's not realistic. If you told people to be honest with themselves, I think at the end of the day, the person would have to admit that was probably, it sounds unrealistic. So I think that if you look at humanity's greatest challenges, they're also humanity's greatest business opportunities. So the lack of clean water, the lack of connectivity, the lack of food, the lack of medicine. These are all humanity's greatest challenges. And this is exactly the stuff that ISU, this is the special sauce and the secret sauce that ISU is all about, which is how can we tackle humanity's greatest challenges, and how can we do it in a sustainable fashion? And I think capitalism or social enterprise, that's how we're going to make it scalable, that's how we're going to make it sustainable. But we can be part of solving humanity's greatest challenges.
Okay. We have another question from Twitter. This is so great to get these. We'll do this and a couple more questions. And then don't forget, we don't want to miss the space station pass, because I know there's a reception after this too. So it's a good question we've really had. And it shows that the grass is always greener, right? You think you know a view on something and you get blindsided and it's not what you think it is. So space entrepreneurship is currently mainly focused on telecom. Where do you identify other untapped directions and emerging fields? Which is so ironic, because I work in telecom and I thought it was ripe for disruption and going to invite everyone to become involved in satellite and telecoms, thinking that all the entrepreneurs are in the other areas. Because we see the entrepreneurs working in human space flight and biotech, nanotech, and other parts of space stations. So the grass is always greener, gentlemen. So what other untapped directions and emerging fields?
I was sure that all new space companies are in Earth observation, not in communication. This is why I started a communication startup, because everybody is somewhere else. Resources, asteroid mining is a real thing. It's not science fiction. And I believe we'll see a lot of new space coming from that. And another thing, very interesting regarding new space, especially new space. Most times you first have a need and then technology solves the need. In the new space industry, it's like a reverse pyramid. Guys invent stuff and then they ask, what can we do with that? They improve attitude control systems, propulsion systems, optics, communication, bandwidth, structures, new materials. What can we do with that? So I think this is what excites me, being part of the new space industry. I really can't tell what we'll do next.
I think in our case, and one of the first things I learned was when you start talking to big names, and through ISU you can easily get to anyone today, any person high up in any big company, being an ISU alumni, don't ask for money, and don't ask for people to join the company if it's a big Boeing executive. First thing is just to ask what they need, what they want, or what would you do if you had this and that and the other. So without technology, and I talked high up what we're doing, but I didn't talk about in the end the hardware that we're developing. But in the end of the day, our company is developing hardware, and you don't really raise money if you're just doing hardware. Usually VCs would invest in companies that are able to become a billion-dollar company. If you're just a small shop, even if selling $30, $40 million a year, or that's what you project, you probably won't raise any money. You have to show you're much bigger than that. But if you show that you're an enabling technology, because sometimes you go to potential customers and you ask them, what do you need? And it's not what you're doing, it's not what you have. And they say, okay, so maybe what I'm doing is not something that the market needs today, or maybe some of the people don't know that this exists, but if they knew they had it, they could suddenly open their eyes. And we found out that in our case, we are developing an enabling technology. And when we went to these big companies to talk to them, their eyes lit up. And then we started talking together. And that's great when you're a little ISU person with a small company talking to big executives with the big companies, and it's a very even discussion, and they're all excited, and their eyes light up and say, well, if I had this, we can do this, that, and the other. We never thought of doing these things because we didn't have the technology. So enabling technologies is something that also opens up new markets, and sometimes you find out on the way what you can do with your own technology that you're developing, which you didn't know. But the established companies help you understand these things.
Question from the audience. We're getting close to 8:30. Yes. Yes, ma'am. Down here at the front.
Hi, my name is Riyut. I'm from Israel. I wanted to know from each of you what was your best project, how much money you needed for it, the seed money, and who did you go for the money?
We didn't talk about this in Israel. So many students at ISU always ask me every year, okay, I want to start a company, where do I get funding from? How do I start that initial start? Where does it come from? I can't just have no job and work for free forever, or if I want to hire people. So, of course, there's many ways, and you give people part of your company, percentage, but in Israel, for example, there is government funding. So we talked a bit against government, but Israel is, of course, a nation that encourages startups and knows that that initial step is always difficult. I don't know if you've been exposed to this up to now, but maybe in the second half of ISU. But the Chief Scientist Office in Israel is someone who helps a lot, helps startups with a very good program that doesn't take a lot or any of your equity of the company. There's funds for startups, and there's a new fund for space startups, because space startups is something very new in Israel. There's about 3 or 4. 2 of them are sitting on this stage. And there's a new fund from the Chief Scientist Office and the Space Agency, which is 85% funding, for example. So you can apply with a project, with an idea and a company, and you get 85% of the money back. So there are many ways, and there's a European fund. If people here from Europe know about FP7, Horizon, 2020, these are all the ones that gave me the initial funding before raising money from VCs, allowed me to start. Another important thing, we mentioned NanoAx and Jeffrey, who was in the movie on Saturday. Everything or any connection you make with a person, with a company, is a stepping stone forward and helps you in the future. So even our education projects are sending, I think the last 2 we sent was number 14 or 15 experiments to the space station. It's education. You would say, okay, how did that help you in your business company? But the relationships with NanoAx and with Jeffrey Manbar, who became one of our mentors, is something that helped us on the way in business. And now, of course, we're thinking of sending our demonstration mission from the space station and doing part of our experiments of our materials on the space station. So something that started with schools and education, but that connection helped us in the future. So everything is a small stepping stone, and sometimes you don't know how that will help you in the future, but they do. So that's my view on how to start that first step.
And gentlemen, what we want is we'll finish with this one, and then I'll ask for final thoughts. Because oh no, Michael, no. This will be our last question, and we'll go back for some final thoughts, if that's okay. I am looking at the clock, and I want to make sure we're on time. Absolutely.
So I have a different opinion regarding how to raise money. I think the best way to raise money is to find someone else and help him raise money, him or her. Start with that. Start working for someone else and helping another entrepreneur to raise money. Do the best job that you can. And then later on, when you do that for yourself, people will help you back. This is karma, this is how it works, and this is what we did. I never took a dime, a cent, a nickel from the government. Later on I can explain one if you want. But it's a great time to be a space entrepreneur. Really great. Interests are zero. People are sitting on money and don't know what to do with it. And if you have a good idea and you are patient enough and you're willing to travel, you'll find someone that believes in your idea and will invest the money. For example, Sky and Space Global is now a listed company in the Australian Stock Exchange. Our investors came from Australia. Why? Really don't know. But they met us, they liked the idea, we discussed, they decided to invest. That's it. So I think that as long as you're willing to practice by first helping others raise money, you'll get the money that you need for your entrepreneurship.
So the first project that I did, it started off as a satellite telecommunications project, and then it ended up being a terrestrial telecommunications project. And the initial several rounds was about $15 million. And to follow up on one of the questions earlier about what some of the trends in space technology, I would say miniaturization, standardization. So NanoRacks is a perfect example of just everything getting smaller, everything becoming standardized. But still one of the most important challenges for space is trying to lower the cost of access. And once we lower the cost of access, then I think a lot of this whole ecosystem will really explode. So it's a combination of all those things. And I think that's one of the things about the Israeli experience is that, and we heard a little bit about that yesterday, which is that people used to make fun of Israeli satellites because they were so small and they were so inexpensive, but it turns out that that was like making fun of the iPhone. It turns out that that's the most amazing technology, and that's really quite an inspiration. So I think that that's a weakness that's become a strength.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, I know you have more questions. Can't get them on the stage, but we are going to have a reception where we'll all be very kindly there. Ask your questions. Come talk to us. Come ask the questions. And before we finish with you, I'll ask the panelists, any final thoughts? Anything you wanted to say tonight and you didn't get a chance to say?
So one of the great things that people argue about the startup nation, the great thing they argue about the Israeli entrepreneurial culture is that many of the successful Israeli entrepreneurs have treated other people's money like their own money. And I think that's a really, really good discipline because it's a very sacred responsibility, you know, because it could be from somebody's grandmother, it could be a college fund. And if you treat it with that sort of respect, the chances are, it's not guaranteed, but the chances are much better that things will be successful. And I'll have to tell you that some of the things that we see in the United States that are unpleasant are that there are a lot of people that enjoy living off of other people's money and never delivering results. So if you just turn that, if we turn that into how do we respect that guardianship of other people's money, it already gets us halfway to being successful.
I think that for me the most important lesson I learned is make your partners your friends, because you'll suffer a lot of mishaps and a lot of difficulties, and if the people around you, your partners, are also your friends and your lives are connected, not only during office hours but also later on, then you'll prevail. You'll go through everything and you'll keep your business together. Too many companies broke up because of personal differences. So if you're thinking of forming a company, pick up the best people you can and then make them your friends.
I think the three main points is, first of all, of course, the founders and how important founders are, but also not falling in love with your initial idea. You know, the company never looks like its business plan. Once you start the company, the business plan is thrown into the bin, finished. So don't fall in love with your initial idea. And it's hard because you say, well, this is the company, and sometimes this is what I raise money with this idea. But sometimes it has to change. So you have to listen to your advisors, listen to your mentors, listen to the market, and of course Michael mentioned the pivoting. One of the most important things is the pivoting, and hopefully you don't have to do a 90-degree bend, otherwise that means your product is off and you won't succeed. But those little pivoting of just changing and tweaking just to meet the market and not building something that nobody wants is very important.
No, thank you. And the thing is, all of these gentlemen have come here as volunteers tonight. All of us were entrepreneurs in the space industry before it was trendy. We really have been through it. And one thing I would say is, wow, what an opportunity you all have. You are living in the golden age of entrepreneurialism on the planet and the golden age of entrepreneurialism for space. There are so many tools at your disposal. We didn't have Googles. We didn't have whole lists of venture capitalists. We didn't even have Silicon Valley when we got going. You do. There's now an entrepreneurial culture here in Israel, in the United States, and growing in Europe and around the world that you can tap into. All these billionaires have very kindly gone off and spent all their billions in space, and we can go use their products now, which is fantastic. So you're doing really well. It's a great time to be an entrepreneur. Now, with that, a couple of quick things. There's a reception. Thanks to Gold Star. Thank you Gold Star for sponsoring the reception tonight. Thank you to Haifa. Thank you to Technion. Thank you to our sponsors. 9:37. If you're standing alone in this room and you think, where is everybody? We're outside watching the space station pass. Then we'll come back in and have some more drinks. But with that, ask your questions afterwards. But please, a warm ISU thank you to Daniel, to Meidad, and to Michael. Thank you.